Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer, Logan Landers, and joining me to talk about the NFL draft prospect known as Julian Pearl, offensive tackle coming out of Illinois. As always, my guy, Mr. Football, Vincent Turner. How you doing, Vincent?
Hey, how you doing today, Mr. Logan Landers?
I'm doing great, sir. Excited to talk about this exciting young prospect coming out of Illinois. If you enjoy the video, everyone, before we get into it, give us a like, follow, share, and subscribe on all of our social media platforms. Check us out, main ones being Facebook and YouTube. And you can also check us out on our podcast page, thanks to the people at the Believe Podcast Network. We have on all major podcast streaming platforms, audio versions of all of our shows, so you can check us out whether you're on your way to work, hanging out in the gym, or just hanging around the house on any given Sunday. You can listen to our show. We have well over 1,000 episodes, and we have a ton of draft content to get you prepped for the 2024 NFL Draft. Well, Vincent, let's talk about this guy. Julian Pearl coming in at 6'6", 315 pounds, the senior out of Illinois with the Fighting Illini. What we like about this young man and how we think he will produce at the next level. Now, when you look at Julian Pearl, he has spent his whole entire career been putting up some good work there in Illinois. He's been there, and overall, he has done some great work, Vincent. This past season was all Big Ten honorable mention. Started 12 games at the left tackle spot. And he's also started in 23 straight games at left tackle after missing one game last year and 22 at Indiana. So he's on a hot streak in terms of being on the field and putting in some really good work. What we like about this young man, what I like about him personally, you see someone who is sound. And when I say sound, I mean fundamentally sound. Someone who knows the right angles to take. He's like a scientist, Vincent. He knows where to go. He knows exactly just where to have his feet, where to place his hands. You're not going to see this guy get crazy penalties and rack up holding calls. You're not going to see it with this guy. He's someone who's methodical, as you always like to say. High football IQ. He's able to put in some great work on the line, call audibles, tell his guys where he needs to shift and where he needs to be. Tremendous instincts as well in terms of reading and reacting to the defense. He can see who's coming from a mile away, it feels like at times, because he rarely lets people get by him, and he is just an absolutely solid player, I think, Vincent. This guy, Julian Pearl. He's got long arms. He's got great strength as well. As I mentioned, he's coming in 6'6", 315. And he shows that good power and speed as well as that nasty, that mean streak that you'd like to see from guys on the offensive line. I think Julian Pearl, and obviously I think people are going to knock him in the draft media for saying, oh, he played at Illinois, which, as we know, Vince isn't a powerhouse school per se. But for me, I've learned ever since I've been doing draft coverages here over the years that, frankly, it don't really matter where you play. It does in a sense, but when it comes to competition at the NFL, a lot of these guys coming out of the college are all on even playing fields in that point, because you're playing up against guys who have been in the league for 5-10 years, who have records, who are going to have their jerseys put up in the rafters and whatnot, be Hall of Famers. And whenever you come from any given college, man, and you get your name on the back of an NFL jersey, it don't matter really where you went to college at. Bragging rights is cool and all, but you're all pretty much at an even playing field about what you can do in the NFL and how you can make a name for yourself. I think Julian Pearl has all the tools to be a great talent in the National Football League. Your thoughts on the big man coming out of Illinois?
Well, you just brought up a good point, Mr. Landers. It's not where you went to school at and what program you've been at. When you get to the National Football League, it's what you do when you get there. And that's what I see in this young man, Mr. Pearl. Comes from a school, Illinois. It hasn't had a lot of great offensive linemen, but they've had some linemen that's been pretty good at a high level. Brad Hopkins, who played with the Tennessee Titans, was on the Super Bowl team with Steve McNair. Kurt Lovelace, that was a good lineman for him down the line. And, of course, the legend himself, Dickie Buckus. Can I say his name one more time, Logan?
Yes, sir.
Dick Buckus. But what I like about the young man, he's a 6-year player now. He's 24 years old. I think he's going to be 25 by the time the draft comes around. But he's played a lot of football, man, in 42 games. He's played over 2,600 snaps. He's given up 16 sacks. But when you do that, 16 sacks in 6 years, that's almost like 2.5 sacks a year. So that pretty much evens out as a football player. To me, he's got a little bit of Terrence Steele, the starting right tackle for the Dallas Cowboys, who's an undrafted free agent, but ended up getting him a big contract because you mentioned the same skill set similarities that Mr. Pearl has. Fundamentally sound, as you just mentioned, Mr. Logan. High football IQ, which you just mentioned, Mr. Logan. But what I like about, he's a competitive guy that has a very positive attitude all the time. And he's another guy that's very light on his feet. And you got to have that playing offensive tackle at the next level. Julian Pearl, to me, as I said, with all that great prospects, this is a gentleman that could come in based on his experience. This is a gentleman that's played a lot of football. He could be an 8 to 10 year player in the National Football League.
Yes, sir. He very well could be. And my final words on Julian Pearl, as I mentioned, he's a methodical player. He's a smart player as well. Someone, as I mentioned, who isn't going to be called for holding calls the entire in the NFL. He's a smart guy, high football IQ, good motor as well, and knows where to go for the point of attack. I think overall, Julian Pearl might be a hidden gem in the NFL draft. Your final thoughts, Mr. Turner?
Mr. Pearl is going to be that guy. It's going to be, like I just mentioned, an 8 to 9 year player in the National Football League. He's played a lot of football. He's very coachable. And what I like about him, they say about his skill set, he's very competitive with a positive attitude.
Yes, sir. Well said, as always. And guys, if you enjoyed this episode, give us a like, follow, share, and of course, subscribe. We'll go live each and every single week on Facebook and on YouTube. And you can also check us out on our podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, as well as on all major podcast streaming platforms. For Mr. Football, Vincent Turner, I've been your host, producer, Logan Landers. Once again, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you all again on another